some roads were never meant to be traveled after dark. They wind through forgotten places where cell towers don't reach, and the last gas station closed decades ago. These are the back roads, the shortcuts locals warn you never to take, the routes that don't appear on GPS, the stretches of asphalt where people have vanished without a trace. What you're about to hear are 5 cases that remain unsolved. 5 people who drove down the wrong road and were never seen again. The authorities have their theories. The families have their desperate hopes. But the truth might be something far worse than anyone wants to believe. Let me take you down these roads. But I'm warning you now, some mysteries are better left unsolved. This is the faint whisper. Case 1. The Vanishing of Highway 47. It was October 2019 when Marcus Webb decided to take the scenic route home. He'd been visiting his sister 3 states over, and rather than drive the interstate for 8 hours straight, he opted for the back roads. More interesting, he'd said in his last text message. More to see. Marcus was a photographer, always chasing the perfect shot. His social media was filled with abandoned barns, rusted bridges, and fog-covered valleys. So when he told his girlfriend he was taking the long way home, she didn't think twice about it. His last known location was a gas station on Highway 47, a 2-lane road that cut through the pinewood forest. The attendant remembered him clearly. A tall man in his 30s, friendly, asked about good photo spots in the area. The attendant had warned him that the forest got dark fast, that cell service was spotty, that most people avoided that stretch at night. Marcus had laughed. "That's exactly what I'm looking for," he'd said. He'd filled up his tank, bought a coffee and a bag of chips, and driven off toward the forest. That was at 4:47 p.m., according to the receipt they found later. He never made it home. When Marcus didn't arrive by midnight, his girlfriend called the police. They traced his last credit card transaction to that gas station and sent officers to drive the route he would have taken. They found his car at 3:01 a.m. It was parked on the shoulder of Highway 47, about 20 miles into the forest. The driver's side door was open. The keys were still in the ignition. The engine was off, but the headlights were on, casting long beams into the dark trees. His camera was on the passenger seat. His phone was in the cup holder, dead. His wallet was in the glove compartment. Nothing appeared to be missing, except Marcus himself. The strangest part, his coffee was still warm. Search teams combed the forest for 2 weeks. They brought in dogs, helicopters, volunteers. They found nothing, no footprints leading into the woods, no signs of a struggle, no trace of blood. But they did find something odd. On the camera's memory card, there were photos from that afternoon. Beautiful shots of the forest, golden light filtering through autumn leaves, a deer crossing the road. Standard stuff for Marcus, but the last photo was taken at 6:23 p.m., nearly 2 hours after he'd left the gas station, a journey that should have taken 40 minutes at most. The photo showed the road ahead, empty and darkening. But in the far distance, barely visible, was something else. When investigators enhanced the image, they could make out what looked like a figure standing in the middle of the road, not walking, not moving, just standing there. The figure was impossibly tall and thin, almost skeletal in proportion. And though the photo was blurry, one detail was crystal clear. It appeared to be looking directly at the camera. The official investigation concluded that Marcus had likely experienced some kind of medical emergency, a stroke, perhaps, or a seizure, and wandered into the forest in a confused state. Despite no history of medical issues, despite the warm coffee, despite the fact that the dogs couldn't pick up a scent trail beyond the immediate area around the car, his family hired a private investigator who discovered something the police had missed. Marcus wasn't the first. Over the past 15 years, 4 other people had disappeared along that same stretch of Highway 47. Different seasons, different circumstances, but always the same pattern: cars found abandoned with keys in the ignition, doors open, no sign of the driver. The local sheriff dismissed it as coincidence. "People get lost in the woods all the time," he'd said. "It's a big forest, but here's what bothers me. Not one of those people has ever been found. Not a body, not a bone, not a shred of clothing. It's as if they stepped out of their cars and simply ceased to exist." Marcus's girlfriend still drives that road sometimes, hoping to find some clue the authorities missed. But she never goes after dark. She learned her lesson after the first time she tried. She won't talk about what she saw that night, but she never went back after sunset again. Case 2. The disappearance on Miller's Pass. Sarah Chen was supposed to arrive at her parents' house for Thanksgiving dinner at 6 p.m. She was driving from the city, a route she'd taken dozens of times. But road construction had closed her usual exit, and her GPS had rerouted her through a series of country roads she'd never seen before. That's how she ended up on Miller's Pass. It was a narrow, winding road that climbed up a small mountain, barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass. No streetlights, no houses, just dense forest on both sides and the occasional deer crossing sign. Sarah called her mother at 5:30 p.m. "I think I made a wrong turn," she'd said. "The GPS is acting weird. It keeps recalculating." "Where are you?" her mother had asked. "I don't know. Some mountain road. There's no signal up here. The call keeps cutting out." That was the last time anyone heard from her. When Sarah didn't arrive by 7 p.m, her father drove out to look for her. He took the route her GPS would have suggested and eventually found Miller's Pass. What he found there still haunts him. Sarah's car was in the middle of the road, engine running, headlights on. All 4 doors were open. Her purse was on the passenger seat, her phone on the dashboard, still showing the GPS screen with the route frozen mid-calculation. But Sarah was gone. The police arrived within an hour. They documented everything, photographed the scene, took statements. Then they made a discovery that changed everything. On the back windshield, written in what looked like condensation or breath, were 4 words: "Don't look for me." The police treated it as a potential abduction. They reviewed traffic camera footage from earlier in the day, interviewed everyone who lived within 10 miles of Miller's Pass, which wasn't many people, and searched the surrounding forest. They found her phone records. Between 5:30 p.m, when she called her mother, and 6:15 p.m, when her father found the car, Sarah had made 7 attempts to call 911. None of them had gone through. The signal on Miller's Pass was notoriously poor, but at 6:03 p.m, her phone had recorded a voice memo. The audio was corrupted, filled with static and interference. But forensic analysts were able to clean it up enough to hear Sarah's voice. "There's something on the road. I don't know what it is. It's not moving. Oh God, it's looking at me. Why isn't it moving? I'm going to turn around. No, the road's too narrow. I can't. What is that sound? Do you hear that? It sounds like singing. No, not singing. Screaming. I'm getting out. I'm going to ask if they need help. Please, if someone finds this." The memo ended abruptly. Investigators learned that Miller's Pass had a reputation among locals. Old-timers called it the Singing Road because of a strange acoustic phenomenon. The wind through the mountain pass created an eerie, almost human-like wailing sound. But that's not all they called it. Miller's Pass had been the site of 11 disappearances over the past 40 years. Most were dismissed as accidents: people who'd driven off the narrow road in bad weather, hikers who'd gotten lost. But 3 were exactly like Sarah's case. Cars found running, doors open, driver vanished. One retired detective, interviewed by a local newspaper, said something chilling. "We always find the cars in the same spot, right where the road crests the top of the mountain, right where you can see both sides of the valley. That's where they all stop. That's where they all get out." When asked what he thought happened to them, he'd shaken his head. "I don't think they got out," he'd said quietly. "I think something convinced them to." 6 months after Sarah disappeared, her mother received a letter in the mail. No return address, postmarked from a town 3 hours away. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Miller's Pass at night, taken from inside a car. Through the windshield, you could see the road illuminated by headlights. And standing in the road, barely visible in the darkness, was a figure. It was tall and impossibly thin, with 2 long arms that nearly reached the ground. Its face was a pale blur, featureless, except for what might have been a smile. On the back of the photograph, written in handwriting that was identified as Sarah's, were 3 words: "We're all here." The police investigated the letter but found no leads. The photograph's metadata had been scrubbed. There was no way to trace where it came from or who sent it. Sarah's case remains open, but the active investigation ended years ago. Her car still sits in an evidence lot, waiting for answers that may never come. Case 3. The Route 9 incident. Thomas Martinez drove a delivery route 5 nights a week. The same route, the same stops, the same roads. He knew every pothole, every stop sign, every shortcut. In 3 years, he'd never had a single problem. Until the night of Route 9, Thomas worked the night shift, delivering packages to rural addresses that regular daytime drivers couldn't reach. It was lonely work, but Thomas liked the quiet, liked the empty roads, liked having his truck cab to himself and his audiobooks. His route usually took him down Highway 72, but that night, an overturned semi had blocked the road. The detour signs directed him to Route 9, an older highway that ran parallel but through more isolated terrain. Thomas had driven Route 9 before, but never at night, never alone. At 2:47 a.m., Thomas called his dispatcher. The conversation was recorded. Thomas: "Hey Mike, I think there's something wrong with my GPS." Dispatcher: "What's wrong with it?" Thomas: "It keeps showing me on Route 9, but I don't think I'm on Route 9 anymore." Dispatcher: "What do you mean?" Thomas: "The road looks different. There are no mile markers, no signs. I've been driving for 40 minutes and I should have hit the next town by now. But there's nothing, just road." Dispatcher: "Are you sure you didn't miss a turn?" Thomas: "Mike, I've been going straight. The road hasn't curved once. It's just straight. For 40 minutes. There was a pause. Thomas: "Mike, I'm going to pull over. This doesn't feel right." Dispatcher: "Okay, let me know when you're stopped, and I'll..." Thomas: "Wait, there's something ahead." Dispatcher: "What is it?" Thomas: "I don't know. It looks like headlights. No, that's not right. They're too high off the ground, and they're not moving. They're just sitting there in the middle of the road." Dispatcher: "Maybe it's a broken down car." Thomas: "No, Mike, it's not a car. I can see the lights, but I can't see what's making them. I'm slowing down. I'm going to..." The line went silent. Dispatcher: Thomas, are you there?" Static. Dispatcher: "Thomas, respond. Can you hear me?" More static, then a voice, faint and distorted. "They're not headlights." The line went dead. Thomas's truck was found the next morning, parked on the shoulder of Route 9. The engine was running. The delivery scanner was on the dashboard, showing his last completed delivery at 2:15 a.m. His phone was in the cup holder, dead. The driver's seat was empty. The cargo area was untouched. All his deliveries were still in the back, undisturbed, but the passenger door was open, and on the ground next to it was Thomas's jacket. The police brought in tracking dogs. The dogs led officers about 50 feet into the trees beside the road, then stopped. They wouldn't go any further. Both dogs sat down and refused to move, whining and pulling back toward the road. The handlers said they'd never seen anything like it. "It's like there's a wall," one said. "They won't cross some invisible line." Thomas's dash cam had been running all night. The footage showed him driving Route 9, just as he described. A straight, empty road with no curves, no intersections, nothing but endless asphalt and darkness. At 2:43 a.m., the lights appeared in the distance. They were high off the ground, bright white, and absolutely motionless. As Thomas drove closer, the lights grew larger, but the source never became clear. They seemed to float in the air, no vehicle beneath them, no structure supporting them. At 2:46 a.m., Thomas's voice could be heard on the recording. "What the hell is that?" At 2:47 a.m., he pulled over, about 100 yards from the lights. At 2:48 a.m., the passenger door opened by itself. Thomas shouted, "Hey!" and turned to look at the door. That's when the lights began to move. They didn't approach like headlights. They simply grew larger, as if they were expanding rather than getting closer. The entire windshield filled with white light, so bright the camera's exposure couldn't handle it. The image became a blown-out, overexposed mess. The audio, however, remained clear. Thomas was breathing heavily. Then he said very quietly, "You're not real. You're not real," a voice responded. It didn't come from the radio or from outside the truck. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, layered and wrong, like multiple voices speaking in unison. "Step out," Thomas began to scream. The footage cut out at 2:49 a.m. When it resumed at 2:51 a.m., the lights were gone, the passenger door was open, and Thomas was nowhere to be seen. The investigation revealed that Route 9 had been the site of 17 unsolved disappearances since 1982. Not all were drivers, some were hitchhikers, some were motorcyclists. One was a state trooper who'd pulled over to check what he thought was an abandoned vehicle. All of them vanished without a trace. The State Highway Department conducted a review and found something disturbing. Route 9 officially ended 40 miles before the location where Thomas's truck was found. The stretch of road he'd been driving on wasn't supposed to exist. When surveyors went to map the area, they couldn't find it. The road Thomas had been on simply wasn't there. In its place was nothing but dense forest and rough terrain. But Thomas's truck was real. The dashcam footage was real. The tire marks on the shoulder were real. The road he'd driven on, the road that led nowhere, had somehow existed for him that night, and for 17 others before him. Case 4. The Hanover County Incident. David and Jennifer Ross had been married for 6 years when they decided to take a weekend getaway. They'd been working too hard, spending too much time apart, and they wanted to reconnect. So they booked a cabin in the mountains, 2 hours from home, and set off on a Friday afternoon. They never made it to the cabin. Their route took them through Hanover County, a rural area known for its winding back roads and scenic views. David was driving, Jennifer was navigating, and according to her sister, who received several text updates, they were in good spirits and making good time. Jennifer's last text came at 7:34 p.m. "Lost signal. GPS acting weird. David says he knows a shortcut." That was the last anyone heard from them. When the Rosses didn't check into their cabin by midnight, the property owner called the police. The next morning, a search team found their car on a dirt road in Hanover County, about 15 miles from where they should have been. The car was locked. The windows were up. The engine was off. The keys in the ignition. Both front seats were empty, but the back seat was soaked in blood. The blood was tested immediately. It belonged to both David and Jennifer. There was enough of it that investigators were certain someone had been seriously injured or killed, but there were no bodies, no signs of violence outside the car, no drag marks, no footprints, nothing to suggest where the blood had come from or where the Rosses had gone. The doors and windows were all locked from the inside. The only way out would have been to unlock a door, exit, then somehow lock it again from the outside. But the car's locking mechanism showed no signs of tampering, and there was no way to lock the doors without the keys or the key fob, both of which were inside the car. It was as if David and Jennifer had simply vanished from a locked vehicle, leaving only their blood behind. Investigators processed every inch of the car. They found David's wallet and phone in the center console, Jennifer's purse on the front passenger seat, a half-eaten bag of chips, 2 bottles of water, both opened, a GPS unit showing a route that made no sense. It had directed them down roads that didn't exist on any map, and in the glove compartment, a note written in Jennifer's handwriting. The note read, "If you're reading this, we didn't make it out. There's something wrong with this road. We've been driving for 3 hours, but we keep passing the same tree, the same dead tree with the broken branch. We've passed it 17 times. David says we're going crazy, but I know what I've seen. The sun set an hour ago, but it's still setting. It won't get dark. The sky is stuck in that orange-red glow, and it won't change. We tried to turn around, but every direction leads back to the same stretch of road. We're trapped. If you find this, don't come looking for us. Whatever is here, it doesn't want us to leave." The note was dated and time-stamped. It was written at 8:15 p.m. 41 minutes after Jennifer's last text. The local police chief, a man named Frank Warren, who'd been on the force for 32 years, knew exactly where the car had been found. He knew because he'd found 3 other cars in that exact spot over the past decade. Different years, different people, same location. All 3 cases had been classified as missing persons. All 3 were still unsolved. Chief Warren told investigators that the locals called that stretch of road the Loop. Drivers who ended up there reported the same thing David and Jennifer had described, driving for hours but never getting anywhere, passing the same landmarks repeatedly, unable to escape. Most people eventually found their way out, usually after dawn. They'd be disoriented, confused, with no memory of how they'd escaped. Their cars would show mileage that didn't match how far they'd driven, sometimes hundreds of miles over what should have been a short trip. But some people, like David and Jennifer, never made it out. "The road doesn't want to let them go," Warren had said quietly. "I don't know why. I don't know how. But I know that road is wrong. I've driven it myself, in broad daylight. And even then, you can feel it, like you're being watched, like something is deciding whether to let you pass." When asked if he'd ever reported this to state authorities, Warren shook his head. "And tell them what? That we have a haunted road? That there's some kind of spatial anomaly that traps people in a loop?" They'd laugh me out of the office. 3 weeks after David and Jennifer disappeared, their cabin rental owner received a phone call. The caller ID showed Jennifer's cell phone number. The owner answered. There was silence, then heavy breathing, then a voice that might have been Jennifer's, though it sounded wrong, hollow and distant. "We're still driving," the voice said. "Please make it stop." The line went dead. Jennifer's phone was in an evidence locker at the police station. It was powered off and had been since the day the car was found. There was no way it could have made that call. Case 5, the Midnight Mile. Raymond Cole had been a long-haul trucker for 23 years. He'd driven every major highway in the country, crossed every state line, weathered every kind of road condition you could imagine. He'd seen accidents, breakdowns, and everything in between, but he'd never seen anything that scared him until the night he drove the midnight mile. Raymond was hauling a load from Michigan to Tennessee, a route he'd driven dozens of times. He'd left late around 9 p.m. and was planning to drive through the night, stopping only for fuel and coffee. At 11:47 p.m., he called his wife, like he always did. He told her he was making good time, that the roads were clear, that he'd be home by Sunday afternoon. "Love you," he'd said. "See you soon." Those were the last words she ever heard from him. Raymond's truck had a GPS tracking system, standard for commercial vehicles. His employer monitored it regularly to ensure drivers stayed on schedule and followed approved routes. At 11:52 p.m., Raymond's truck left Interstate 65 and turned onto County Road 14, a rural back road that wasn't part of his planned route. His employer immediately called him. No answer. At 12:03 a.m., the GPS showed the truck stopped on County Road 14 in the middle of nowhere. It stayed there for 4 minutes. At 12:07 a.m., the truck began moving again, but not on County Road 14. According to the GPS, it was moving through an area where there were no roads, just empty farmland. At 12:09 a.m., the truck's speed reached 95 mph. Impossible for a fully loaded semi on a back road. At 12:10 a.m., the GPS signal was lost. At dawn, state police found Raymond's truck in a field, half a mile from County Road 14. There were no tire tracks leading to it, no evidence of how it had gotten there. The trailer was intact, the cargo undisturbed. The cab was empty. The driver's seat was soaked in sweat. The steering wheel had handprints on it, smeared and frantic. The radio was on, tuned to nothing but static. And on the dashboard, written in what looked like blood, was a single word: run. Every trucker keeps a logbook, recording miles driven, rest stops, and fuel purchases. Raymond's logbook was found in the cab, and his final entries told a story that made no sense. 11:50 p.m. Turned onto CR 14. Something wrong with GPS, showing roads that aren't there. 11:55 p.m. Road is getting narrower, can't turn around. Too many trees, 12 lay shards. a.m. Passed the same barn 3 times. I know I'm going straight, but I keep ending up back here. How is this possible? 12:05 a.m. The headlights don't reach far enough. I can see the road right in front of me, but beyond that is just black. Not darkness. Black. Like the road ends, and there's nothing. 12:08 a.m. There are people on the road, standing still. I'm trying to stop, but the truck won't slow down. I'm hitting the brakes, but it's accelerating. God, please, I'm going to hit them. The final entry was barely legible. 12:10 a.m. They're not people. Raymond's truck had a dash cam. The footage was recovered and reviewed by police, but they never released it to the public. One officer who watched it, a veteran state trooper named Patricia Mills, gave a statement to a journalist years later. "I've seen a lot of bad things in my career," Mills said. "Accidents, crime scenes, things that stick with you. But that footage, I wish I'd never watched it." When pressed for details, Mills hesitated, then continued. The first few minutes are normal. Raymond is driving down a country road at night, dark but normal. Then the road starts to change. It gets narrower, the trees get denser, and the headlights seem to dim, like something is absorbing the light. Then Raymond starts talking to himself. He's panicking, saying he can't turn around, that he's been driving in circles. And then the figures appear. They're standing on the road, not moving, just standing there. And Raymond is right. They're not people. They're shaped like people, but they're wrong. Too tall, too thin, and they don't have faces. Just smooth, blank heads. Raymond tries to stop the truck, but it doesn't slow down. He's shouting, slamming on the brakes, but the truck keeps accelerating. And as he gets closer to the figures, they start to move. Not walking, they kind of glide toward the truck, and their arms reach out, and they're too long, way too long. The truck plows right through them, or it should have, but they don't get hit. They phase through the truck, like smoke, and as each one passes through, Raymond screams. The last thing on the footage is Raymond looking in the rearview mirror. He's staring at something in the back of the cab, and his face. I've never seen that kind of terror. He opens the door and jumps. While the truck is still moving, the camera keeps recording for another 30 seconds. The truck is driving itself, accelerating, and through the windshield, you can see it leave the road and head into the field. And just before the camera cuts out, you can see something in the back of the cab. A shadow, a shape, moving. Mills refused to elaborate further. The camera keeps recording for another 30 seconds. The truck is driving itself, accelerating, and through the windshield, you can see it leave the road and head into the field. And just before the camera cuts out, you can see something in the back of the cab. A shadow, a shape, moving. Mills refused to elaborate further. Raymond's body was never found. Search teams combed the area for weeks, but found nothing. No footprints, no blood trail, no evidence that he jumped from the truck at all. The company that owned the truck wanted it back, but when mechanics went to retrieve it, they refused to get inside. One mechanic, who asked not to be named, said, "It smelled wrong, like rot and smoke and something else I can't describe. And when I looked through the window, I swear I saw something moving in the back." The truck was eventually towed and scrapped. No one wanted to drive it, but here's the part that keeps me up at night. County Road 14 is exactly 1 mile long. The locals call it the Midnight Mile because it's the only straight stretch of road in the area. And at night, with no lights and no traffic, it feels endless. Raymond's GPS data showed that between 11:52 p.m. and 12:10 a.m., a span of 18 minutes, his truck traveled 47 miles on a road that's only 1 mile long. Where was he for those other 46 miles? And more importantly, what was he running from? 5 back roads, 5 disappearances, 5 cases that remain unsolved. The authorities have their explanations: medical emergencies, navigation errors, foul play, accidents. They close the files and move on to the next case. But the families of the missing know better. They've seen the patterns. They've heard the stories. They know that some roads are more than just asphalt and paint. Some roads are doorways to places we're not meant to go. And once you're on one of those roads, once you've seen what waits in the darkness beyond your headlights, there's only one rule that matters. Don't stop driving. Don't pull over. Don't get out of your car. Because the moment you do, the moment you step onto that dark pavement and look around at the empty road and the silent trees, that's when they come for you, and you'll never be seen again. The cases described in this story are fictional. Any resemblance to real events or persons is purely coincidental. If you're driving on a back road tonight and something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. Turn around. Take the long way. Get back to the main highway. Some shortcuts aren't worth taking.